Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're watching this video, that means you need help filing your self-employed taxes and you potentially need a T2125 along with a T1 tax return. If you know at least this much, then you've come to the right video. But first, let's start off by talking about what is a T2125. A T2125 is a Canadian taxpayer form that's used to report self-employment or professional services on your personal taxes. Let's say you have a side hustle where you're doing DoorDash, Uber Eats, Skip the Dishes, you're a freelance photographer, you may be a makeup artist, or you're buying and selling garments. If you're doing any one of those things and the list goes on, but you don't have a corporation, you need to file a T2125. Most sole proprietors fill out the T2125 along with a T1 tax return. So first, let's understand the two concepts. The T2125 is for your self-employed or professional activities, and the T1 will cover your regular employment income. In other words, you need to fill out the T2125 form to report your self-employment income. You need to calculate the taxes that you've earned from doing a side hustle, or maybe your side hustle is your main hustle. Whatever the case may be, you need to pay some tax. And once you have the T2125 finished, this gets included as part of your T1 general income tax return. The T1 form can include incomes from other sources like a T4, a T4E. You can include your medical slips, your donation slips. The T1 is just a collection of various other forms. The T2125 is filled out by anyone who has self-employed income or anyone that generates income from a small business that is not incorporated. And you have to fill out the schedule even if the business is not registered or is outside of Canada. Whatever goods you're selling, whatever services you're providing, if you are getting paid for those goods and services, that income needs to get reported on this T2125 schedule. Now, if you have self-employment income from fishing or farming activities, then you need to fill out two separate schedules, a T2121 and a T2042. But other than those two specific instances, you will mainly require the T2125. Now, there are 9 sections of this form which I will walk you through. Not all of them may be applicable based on each of your business, but it's important to understand what the 9 sections are so you can fill them out accordingly. And later in the video, I'll do a step-by-step where I actually show you how to fill out the T2025 and walk you through the 9 sections. The first is the identification, which includes who you are, including your business name, a SIN and business number if you have one. Next is internet business activities. This needs to be filled out if you have internet business activities that generate an income. Next is business and professional income. This is where all of your income gets reported. Next is your net income or loss before adjustments. This is where you report all of your expenses that you incur in order to run a business. After you have your business income, your business expenses, then you end up with a net income or a loss. This is your final net income or loss for that year. Next, your other amounts that are deductible from your share of a net partnership income. This is where you would write down any business expenses that may not fit in the other preceding categories that we just talked about. Next, you would calculate the business use of home office expenses. If you are using your home as a basis to run your office, then certain expenses are deductible against that business income. Details of other business partners. If you have other partners that you work with, this is where you would write down that information. Last up, details of equity. This is where you would report any debts that are owed to you at the end of the year and any personal contributions or withdrawals you have made. So as you're filling out your T2025, you have to understand two key concepts: gross income versus net income. These are two key sections you have to fill out, part of the T2125, which will form the basis of how much tax you may have to owe the government. Gross income is just another way of saying this is the total income you've earned from running a business. Net income refers to the profit that's left over after you take your business income, subtract business expenses, and any other deductions. This is what's left over. And once you understand your gross income, then at that point you tally up all your business expenses before you go to the net income stage. Now make sure all the expenses that you do include as part of your T2025 are relevant business expenses. And that includes any business use of your home office expenses if you have any. Some of those expenses that you can write off against your business income may include meals, entertainment, business licenses, insurance, advertising, etc. Whatever business expense you incur is a deduction against business income. And make sure you understand that you can't write off any expense as a business expense. It must be justifiable. It must be documented that why this business expense is used to generate income. Because when it comes to accounting and tax filing in general, you have to understand the matching principle concept. That means understanding what business expense you incurred that matches against the revenue it generated. For example, let's say you're advertising your business. That is a business expense because you are getting your word out there. You are looking to attract customers. So if you don't spend on advertising, your business may not be out there as much. So you have to spend in order to generate that income. That business expense incurs that business income. Now, what if you have multiple side hustles? You may be surprised to hear that you can actually run multiple businesses under a single sole proprietorship. Let's say as an example, your main passion is graphic designing, so you run a graphic design business, or you're a freelance photographer, and in the evenings you work as an income earning podcast host. Those are multiple businesses that can be part of one single sole proprietorship. And if you are in those situations, then you need to fill out a separate T2025 for each of those businesses. So now that you have some background, let's run through an example. And for this example, I'll be using Wealthsimple Tax. If you want to do the same for your taxes, you can use the link in the description to use Wealthsimple Tax for your own taxes, and you can even earn $15 for getting started. The first thing you're going to do when you log into the platform or sign up is fill out the About You section. Let's start off by typing in the first name, John, last name, Snow. What is the email address? Type in your email address if you have one. Then you'll need to enter your social insurance number. I'm just going to use a mock social insurance number as an example. And let's say John is born in 1985, January 1st. Preferred language is English, and this is not a deceased person. Next, if you have your net file access code from filing from last year, highly recommend you enter that here because this will speed up the process. Now, this access code is not mandatory, so if you don't have one, that's okay, you can still keep going. The reason you should fill out the net file access code is because it allows you to authenticate yourself faster. Otherwise, you'll have to rely on other information for authentication purposes. Next, enter in your mailing address. Let's say John Snow lives in 123 Fake Street, City of Fake Town, Ontario. Write a postal code. Okay, moving on to about your residence. John Snow is in Ontario. Has not changed, that's fine. Is it the same? Sure. Still in Ontario. Did you become a resident of Canada for tax purposes in 2021? In this case, John did not. He is single. Marital status change? No. No dependents. Miscellaneous. Does he have any specified foreign property that is worth more than $100,000? No. Did he dispose of his principal residence? No. And again, as you're going through this, make sure you understand what the question is. And if you see something in blue, you can click on it and get more information if you're not sure how to answer that question. Read the question, understand the description, and then answer accordingly. Is John filling out the tax return for the first time? No. And he's a Canadian citizen? Sure. Do I authorize the CRA for Election Canada purposes? Are you a person registered under the Indian Act? No. Confined to a prison? No. I'm going to skip all this for now so I can actually go ahead and do my T2125. So once you get to the search box, you can simply just type in T2125 and you'll see it right here, business, professional, and commissions income. Click on that and it will add in the form for you. The first field is identification. What is your business name? In this case, if you don't have a business name, you can leave it blank, or if you do, you can put it over here. And if you have a GST number, you would enter it here if you have one. What kind of income did you earn? So in this case, let's say John is an Uber Eats driver. This is business income. Does the business have its own address? No. Is it a partnership? No. And it ran from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. What is the main product or services? Uber Eats. And industry code is 492210. And how did I get the industry code? Well, if you click here, you can actually search. So in this case, Uber Eats is food delivery. So all I did was type in delivery and the option popped up, local messengers and local delivery. Now let's say you're a graphic designer or a photographer. Well, type in graphic and you can see I have two options. I can use the industry code for graphic design services, or I can use this one for photographic services. So based on the side hustle or the main hustle you're working on, just search in the keyword here and find the applicable industry code. Let's go back to my Uber Eats example. So that's done identification. Next is your income and expenses. Again, if you're not sure what to fill out on a particular line item, if you see something in blue, just click on that. Read through a description. What is income? What is business income? What is gross sales? It's all here. Understand what you're trying to fill out and then fill out the boxes accordingly. So let's say in this example, I did $25,000 worth of delivery. I'll put that here. If you have any returns or allowances. Now, as soon as I put $25,000, you'll notice on the left-hand side, it shows I owe $4,500 in taxes. And this is because in this tax form, the only thing I've put in so far for an income perspective is $25,000. You won't pay tax on the full $25,000 because I first have to enter in all my expenses, which will come down to my net income. Then my taxes will be based on my net income. Now, if you have other slips, like you have a T4, you have a tuition, you have RRSP, you would put all those information into this tax form after you fill out your T2125. I actually have another walkthrough that shows you how to do just that. It's in a separate video, which you can check out here, link in the description. Let's go back to this example. In this case, did John have any other business income? No. So let's leave my gross income at $25,000. Now, let's say if I was in the business of a graphic design artist or a photographer, I may have some cost of goods sold. Maybe I have a subcontractor videographer. Maybe I subcontract printing services. All that information will fall under here. You only fill out what is applicable for your business. Do you have inventory? As a Uber Eats driver, you likely don't have very much inventory. Actually, you may have zero inventory. Now, you could potentially have inventory if you offer a bottle of water to all your customers, so that may count as inventory, but again, you may not have that much inventory. Compared to a side hustle where you're buying and selling goods, then you definitely have some inventory. If you're a graphic design artist, maybe your inventory is printing supplies. That could be inventory. So again, it's all based on your own unique situation and your business. That is my cost of goods sold. In this case, I have no cost of goods sold. In this case, I would put in yes, write down your opening inventory, how much you've purchased, and your closing inventory. So for example, this is my first year running Uber Eats. I had zero inventory and I bought $1,000 worth of water cases. And at the end of the year, I have now $100 worth. There you go. My cost of goods sold was $900. This is just an example. You would have to assess if you have inventory or not based on your situation. In this case, I'm going to leave it as no. And the cool thing about Wealthsimple Tax is as you fill out these boxes, as you change numbers, as you tick different options, you can see live how much tax you owe as you fill out your T2125. Now that you're done filling out your income side, this is where you can deduct certain expenses against that income. So first up is advertising. Now, as an Uber Eats driver, I'm likely not doing much advertising. So if you do have advertising expenses, you would put them in here. So if I had $1,000 worth of advertising, I would put that here and move on to the next item. But in this case, I do not, so I'm going to leave it blank. Same thing with meals and entertainment. Same thing with each of these categories. Take a look to see if those expenses qualify for your business. So while I'm running Uber Eats, I may or may not have meals and entertainment expenses. Bad debt, if you have invoiced someone, they have not paid you, it's part of your accounts receivable, you have no chance of recovering that money, you would put that in here. If you have some insurance costs in order to run your business, you would put that here. So let's say I'm spending $1,000 on insurance, I could put that here. Interest, if you have taken on any loans in order to generate income, you could put that here. You can deduct interest on money borrowed for the purpose or to acquire property for the business. Business tax, fees, licenses, dues, membership, and subscriptions. Maybe as a freelance photographer, you are subscribed to an annual camera magazine or a graphic design magazine. Any subscription that's used or any membership that's used to earn that income goes in these boxes. So for Uber Eats, there's not many expenses I can claim so far. Office expense, if you have an office, maybe you're buying supplies as part of your business, you would put that here. What's the difference between supplies and office expenses? You can click on here. You can deduct the cost of office expenses. These include small items such as pens, pencils, paper clips, stationery, stamps. Office expenses do not incur capital expenditures, meaning those expensive big ticket items. So if you're a photographer, you bought a $1,000 camera, that's not office expense. There's a separate section for that called the capital item section. Supplies or cleaning supplies used by a plumber. If you run a daycare, these include household supplies that children use and food you buy to feed the children. Legal, accounting, and other professionals. So let's say you had to pay $1,000 to a lawyer to help set up your Uber Eats profile. Or maybe you paid an accountant to help you fill out this T2125 or your taxes in general. So let's say you spend $2,000 on this. You can put that here. Do you have certain management or admin fees? If you have office, are you paying rent on those office? Maintenance and repairs. Now, as an Uber Eats driver, likely your biggest equipment is your car. You have maintenance and repairs on your car. We will get to a separate section later where you can put all those items related to your car. This is mainly general maintenance and repairs. This repairs and maintenance is the cost of labor and materials for any minor repairs or maintenance done to property used to earn income. Not your car, that's a separate section. So going back to my example, as a freelance graphic designer or a freelance photographer, you paid $100 to repair your camera. You could potentially put that here. Salaries, wages, and benefits. Have you hired employees to run the business on your behalf? As an Uber Eats driver, this may not be applicable, or even property taxes. Travel, are you traveling to earn business income? Telephone and utilities, you're probably using your cell phone to run your Uber Eats apps. You can put the business portion of that cost of that telephone utilities. You're likely paying utilities to run the office. You would put those costs here. So as a freelance graphic designer, freelance photographer, you may have a studio that you're renting. If you have utilities to run that studio, you can put those things over here. Fuel costs, except for motor vehicle. Again, the car has a separate section. Delivery, freight, and expenses. This is the section you're likely interested in as an Uber Eats driver, motor vehicle expenses. As you can see, if you're doing DoorDash or Uber Eats or Skip the Dishes, there's not that many expenses you can actually deduct that would generate that business income from driving to deliver food. And that's why when I say when you're looking at this form, you need to assess what expenses are applicable. As you can see, a freelance photographer may have more expenses that are applicable against that business income. Same thing with a freelance photographer. It just depends on the nature of your business. As an Uber Eats driver or DoorDash or Skip the Dishes, the biggest item you have is your car and the expenses related to your car. And there's a separate section that talks about those things, which we'll look into. So let's actually go through the motor vehicle expenses. So this is where you'd put in the make and model of your car that's used for your Uber Eats delivery. So let's say I have a Honda Civic. I drove 30,000 kilometers in the year, and this car mainly was used to earn business income. So out of the 30,000, 5,000 was personal use, and 25,000 was for food delivery. Now, if you are doing food delivery, whether for Uber Eats, DoorDash, or Skip the Dishes, you have to keep a log of the kilometers you are driving. How much driving are you doing for personal? How much driving are you doing for business? Because the CRA can't ask for documentation to back up these claims. Now that you've written down how many kilometers you've driven total, including personal and business, and how much you've dedicated out of those total kilometers to be your business kilometers, you can put in your expenses for your car. Now, do you prorate your expenses here? No, you don't. You put in the exact amount, the total amount you spent on fuel and oil in total, business and personal. And I'll show you why. So I said throughout the year, I spent $5,000 to fuel my Honda Civic. You'll notice at the section here, it'll say your total cost, and then it will automatically calculate the business use portion. So what it's doing is taking 25,000 divided by 30,000. That rate gets applied to all your expenses. I paid car insurance. That was another, call it $6,000. License registration, $200. I spent $3,000 on repairs. So as you can see, these expenses that I'm putting down is lowering the taxes I owed, because even though I earned $25,000, I had to spend money to make that money. And I only get taxed on my net income, or the profit that's left over after deducting expenses. Now, if you have an electric vehicle, so if my Honda Civic was a full electric car, such as a Tesla, I would put the electricity for that vehicle. This is where you can put down other expenses. So items that you could not claim over here, maybe there's certain items that you can claim that do not fit those categories, you can put in over here. For example, $100. What did you spend the $100 on? You would type in the description here. In this case, I don't have any other expenses. Next is business parking fees. Not your total parking fees, but just the business portion of your parking fees. So let's say I had $300 worth of parking fees that I paid throughout the entire year. Of that $300, $250 was for driving Uber Eats. I would put that here. Maybe you have some supplementary business insurance. You could put that cost over here. Did you finance your Honda Civic, or did you finance your car? Did you lease your car? Select yes or no based on your options. Same thing for leasing. So if I say yes, it'll ask me a bunch of other questions, and I can fill this out accordingly. If I lease my Honda Civic, again, more questions, and then you would fill this out accordingly. So let's say for the purpose of this video, I did not finance my Honda Civic, but I leased it instead. Total lease charges incurred in your 2021 fiscal year. So how much did I pay as part of my lease for all of 2021? Let's say my lease cost came in at, I don't know, $6,000. Total lease payments deducted before your 2021. So prior to 2021, how much did I pay in my leases? So maybe I leased partway through 2020, and 2021 was my first full year of leasing. So maybe last year, I spent $3,000 on my lease. Total number of days the car was leased in 2021 and the previous fiscal years. So in this example, I leased my car partway through 2020 and full in 2021. So half of 1 year and full of one, that would be, let's do the math, 365 business days, divide that by 2. I got it in June, add 365 on top for 2021, 547 days. Now I'm putting in just general details for the purpose of this example. Make sure as you're going through this, you put in the exact details based on the information you have. What is the manufacturer's list price? This car retails for $30,000. Put that in here. And it will automatically calculate the eligible leasing cost based on what I've put in and the applicable rate in my province and territories, which in this case is based on Ontario. After you filled out your allowable motor expenses, the next thing you want to claim is CCA, or capital cost allowance. Because you can't deduct the full cost of your car on your taxes, it's spread out over years. That's called depreciation, or for tax purposes, CCA. Now, if the cost of your car is more than $30,000 before taxes, you would use Class 10.1. If your car costs less than $30,000, you would use Class 10. In this case, it's a new car. It's $30,000 because I did not have anything to use CCA at the start. I haven't sold it. How much CCA do I want to claim on this car? The software will automatically calculate what's the best CCA for you, so feel free to leave this blank. So all this is saying that you bought a $30,000 car. Based on the value depreciation, your car is now worth $25,500 at the end of the tax year. Now, I do want to highlight, I'm just using general numbers and general concepts for the purposes of explaining this video. So if you're not sure how to do any of this, make sure you reach out to a professional accountant who can guide you through. So this portion takes care of my expenses. So if I go back up to my form, you'll notice that my motor vehicle expenses, not including CCA, are $17,000. And that's because I had significant expenses for fuel and oil, insurance. So I had $20,000 worth of costs. My business use was $16,800, and it's all been calculated for me. So now you know how the $17,000 breaks down. Here's my capital cost allowance from the car. And if you have any additional expenses that you incurred that are not part of this list, you would fill that over here. Now notice that after I put out all my expenses, I don't owe any taxes. Whereas when I put in $25,000 initially as part of my gross income, I had about $4,500 of taxes that I owed. This is why it's so important to make sure you understand all the expenses that you incur as part of your business. Make sure everything is well documented. So if the CRA is asking, why did you claim this? You can give them proof. In this case, even though I made $25,000 top line, I only made a profit of just over $1,100. Now you may have some additional items that you can claim. So let's say part of your Uber Eats, you bought a really fancy GPS system and you need to calculate some CCA on that. You can use this option here, or you can report to us only. It's up to you. If you bought a really fancy camera because you're a graphic design artist, or a fancy laptop, or whatever it is, generally speaking, if you're buying something for more than $500, it's likely a capital cost item. So I'll show you what that looks like. You can report the totals, or you can calculate CCA and put in a more detailed view. Generally speaking, I would recommend using this option to calculate CCA. You would only use this option if you know how much CCA you're calculating beforehand. And that's why I prefer to calculate CCA in a much more detailed view, and I would use this stage. So you can fill this out accordingly if you bought capital equipment items. As an Uber Eats driver, you're not likely using your business for home office expenses because you're not really meeting any clients or taking on additional work inside your home. But maybe as a freelance photographer or graphic artist, you're doing a lot more work at home. Part of your home is your home studio. You would fill out those details accordingly. The total number or rooms of the home, how much of that space is related to your work, all the heat, electricity, insurance, very similar to what I did with the car. You would fill this out in the exact same way I just did the car. And I've already filled out the motor vehicle expenses. There's really not much else that's left for me to claim. My net income for this business of running Uber Eats is now $1,100. So now that I filled out all the sections accordingly, nothing else is really applicable. I'm left with $1,200 in net income, and I don't have to pay any taxes because it's actually less than the personal basic exemption, which is roughly around $12,000. Now, Uber Eats may just be your side hustle. You may actually have a T4 income because during the day you're actually working a office job to receive a T4 income. You have an RSP deduction, you had some medical expenses, you made some donations. So all those items you would enter on this form, the T1 form. So as I showed you earlier in the video, there is a search box that you can put in your T4. You can put in RSP, climate action incentive, donations, medical expenses, investment income, and the list goes on. You would fill out each section as it's applicable for your situation. And now make sure you watch out this video where I walk you through the T4, the RSP, medical donations, etc. It's all part of filling out your T1 general form. Now, at any time, if you're not sure what to do, how to fill something out, again, make sure to reach out to a professional tax accountant who can guide you through or fill out the paperwork on your behalf. It may not be worth the headache because maybe you don't want to deal with the CRA if something goes wrong. So maybe you're better off paying someone to do it for you. And in that case, as I just showed you, you can claim the cost of having an accountant fill out your T2125. That's it for now. Make sure you check out all the links in the description so you can get started with filing your own taxes. I'll talk to you in the comments section.